Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. This is a special edition of Daily Palantir because, folks, we have just closed at the highest level ever in history for Palantir at $39.25. We've got a lot to talk about, a lot to dive into. There are a bunch of reasons why I think we had a 4% move on Palantir today. Let's get into it. So first off, congrats to shareholders. I mean, $39.25. It is a big deal. The idea of getting back to $39, we have not seen it over the past 3 years. I think we all kind of thought it was possible given we were hovering around this range. But what makes it really special is something I talked about in the last episode of Daily Palantir, which is that insiders have been selling a lot. And it's fine for insiders to sell. It is what it is. It happens. But when insiders dump close to $1 billion worth of stock and the stock still finds momentum to go higher, I mean, I've been in the investing ecosystem for about 5 years now. I have not seen insiders dump close to $1 billion within 2 weeks, and the stock actually goes higher to the point where you as a retail investor can get a better exit price than Peter Thiel and Alex Karp if you were to sell right now. By the way, after hours, we're at 39.44, so we are up another 0.5% after hours, basically being up about 5%. For the day. So first thing I want to start off by saying is just congrats to all shareholders. It's been a hell of a journey. I think we are just getting started. I think it's going to be a very exciting journey over the coming decades. And we've got to analyze because this is a company that has a lot of stuff that requires analyzing in order to understand the broader thesis. Now, there are two components to why I think Palantir is up 5% on the day. I'm going to go into the first part of my thesis, which is the longer part, and kind of get that settled, and then we'll get into the smaller part of my thesis for why I think the stock uniquely today is up 5%. Real quick before we do that, historical price action on Palantir. This is from Yahoo Finance. January 27th, 2021, we closed above $39. We hit a high of 45. After January 27th, 2021, we never closed higher than $39 until today, where we closed at $39.25. So it has quite literally been more than 3 years since we closed at a level that was the level that we closed at today. We have not hit all-time highs yet at $45, but this is one of the highest closes that we've seen for Palantir in over 3 years, right? And that's why it's also one of those things where it's like, all right, you know, the momentum is kind of heating up here in the context of what's happening with Palantir. Final thing, right before we get into why I think it's up 4% of the day, I think this is also really important to look at. Retail is selling, folks. Retail's not really buying. Now, the caveat here is if you use Robinhood, Robinhood is a platform that allows retail investors to trade and buy stocks. At the bottom of every ticker, they added this a couple months ago, you can see what their users are doing in terms of net buying or net selling as a percentage of the overall buying and selling based on their activity on the platform. So as you can see, from September 25th until yesterday, these red candles right here, retail, at least on Robinhood, I know there are other platforms that retail uses to trade like Fidelity, Schwab, etc., but retail on Robinhood has been a net seller. And so retail has not been chasing, at least in the context of Robinhood, the stock price. They've been selling with Peter Thiel and with Alex Karp. Retail has been securing some profits. So that leads me to believe there is an argument. I'm not saying there's no retail FOMO going on right now. I think there's definitely some retail FOMO happening right now. But there is an argument that Peter Thiel and retail offloaded some shares to institutions, and hedge funds ended up buying those shares. Money managers ended up buying those shares over retail buying those shares at $37, $38, and as of today, $39. I do think that is something that is happening, just given the other pieces of data that I'm looking at. Do I still think there's some retail buying? Of course. But I think there is an argument that Peter Thiel dumping 20 million shares, maybe he ended up dumping it to the institutions, which is why the stock didn't really budge to the downside, because if institutions are buying it, they're kind of ready to hold it for the long term. And so you have some liquidity that's actually holding up the stock price based on these insider sales. All right, let's talk about my main thesis today, why Palantir is up. At the time I posted it, it was 3%. We are looking like we're going to close closer to 5% on the day. So if you looked at NVIDIA, now NVIDIA didn't close 5% on the day, but for the first about 3 hours of the morning, call it from 9:30 to about 12:30, we did see Palantir and NVIDIA trade almost identical to each other. And Palantir would go up with NVIDIA, NVIDIA would go down, Palantir would go down, and the little green and red candles would correspond with each other. Here's what I think is causing the momentum for Palantir. Yesterday, some of you guys might have missed it. Jensen Huang, CEO and founder of NVIDIA, did a joint interview with the CEO of Accenture. Accenture is a consulting firm that has tens of thousands of clients. They announced that 30,000 Accenture consultants would be trained on NVIDIA technology and help deploy that technology into thousands of clients that Accenture consults with in the enterprise. Now, Accenture just announced they did $1 billion in generative AI consulting sales or bookings for Q2. They did $16 billion in revenue, so about 6.2% of the total revenues they did in Q2 was generative AI consulting bookings. So if a consulting firm is doing $1 billion a quarter of Gen AI and now partnering with NVIDIA to further enhance AI adoption in the enterprise, to the point where they do like a 15-minute CNBC joint interview yesterday, it signals one major thing to me. And it signals that enterprises really want an AI strategy that works. I mean, if you've got one of the leading consulting firms on the planet with obviously one of the leading AI company on the planet with NVIDIA coming together saying, hey, we're going to let your thousands of consultants use the NVIDIA tools to promote and evangelize generative AI applications in the enterprise from a software stack perspective, that seems really bullish for a company that we've been talking about on the channel for a couple years now that is inside of that AI generative SaaS marketplace as a ecosystem product. That is an AI name in the broader SaaS landscape, which is Palantir. So what does this mean for Palantir? Accenture has a partnership with Palantir already. I don't really know if it's a meaningful partnership. They had a partnership back in 2022. I haven't gotten any word of that partnership in over 2 years. So for all intended purposes, I'm going to assume that Accenture and Palantir's partnership isn't really relevant because we just haven't heard about it over the past couple years. So the Accenture NVIDIA partnership to me is more about marketing than anything. Like, is it a good partnership? Yes, but I think it's about NVIDIA using Accenture scale and Accenture using NVIDIA's generative AI brand, which is the best brand on the planet right now, to convince more customers in the enterprise that implementing AI is a good thing. So if Accenture's working with NVIDIA on this generative AI stuff and not Palantir, it makes sense why NVIDIA is up 3%. So why did Palantir close at their highest levels today since 2021? That is where I think we get into a thesis that we've been talking about on the channel, particularly since S&P inclusion. The market believes that Palantir is the enterprise AI winner. I think the market thinks Palantir can actually unlock the trillions of dollars that AI can produce for the enterprise uniquely because of the ontology and their bootcamp go-to-market to sell their software. So what I think is happening here is NVIDIA, big Gen AI name, and Accenture partner together. And the market says, okay, that's important for enterprise AI adoption. And that should be really good for software companies outside of just the hardware stack that's building the GPUs. Because again, the whole point of the GPUs is to implement software in some use case, whether it's ChatGPT, whether it's AIP, whatever it may be. And so I think the market saw that partnership and they were like, hold on a second. These guys partnering together means that they obviously believe there has to be a multi-trillion-dollar opportunity inside of the enterprise AI landscape. We might not want to buy Accenture, by a consulting firm, to get exposure to that. I'm thinking in the perspective of the market. We might not want to buy NVIDIA to get exposure to that because we're buying NVIDIA for a totally separate thesis. So this partnership, how can it be used as a proxy to figure out what to tell us what to buy? And I think the conclusion today that they came up to, again, this is my theory, this is my thesis. You can put in the comments if you agree or disagree. I think they decided Palantir is the winner there. Forget about Palantir's valuation. Forget about, any of the short-term catalysts outside of earnings. And, we maybe haven't gotten any crazy deals to get this 4% move. I just think it was a perceptual thing today where the market was like, okay, biggest Gen AI name, biggest consulting firm, partner together, whole thesis for 15 minutes on CNBC in their joint interview is AI in the enterprise. What is the one software company that has actually proved they can implement AI in the enterprise to the point where they have 5 conferences on their AI platform actually showcasing hundreds of customer testimonials? It's Palantir. Okay, so if Palantir is that company and NVIDIA and Accenture are saying there's a crazy amount of demand, Accenture is doing $1 billion in 90 days. Palantir is going to do about $2.7 billion, maybe $2.8 billion for the year. Accenture is doing $1 billion in 90 days in generative AI consulting. One could argue, okay, so they're not even really selling technology. They're selling consulting services around Gen AI. What happens when Palantir starts really ramping up the growth in terms of the actual technology that has 80% gross margins, which are simply better margins than a consulting firm? It looks like Palantir should be potentially doing $1 billion of revenue a quarter. maybe more than $1 billion of revenue a quarter. If they're compounding at 30, 40, 50% over the next couple of years, like they're going to be doing 6, 7 billion a year in revenue. What is that worth? Well, we put this multiple and we front run the action and buy the stock today. I think that's what's happening right now. I think what NVIDIA and Accenture unlocked, and maybe the stock falls 10% tomorrow and, it was just something that ran up and people took some profits. That is totally possible. But I think to justify the 5% run up, it was obvious to me that the market was saying, we believe generative AI in the enterprise is a winner as a vector, as a vertical, and as a sector that we can bet on. And then the question becomes, where do we get the exposure from? And the exposure ends up being Palantir. And so that's really what I think happened today. And that's why I think Palantir was up 5%. So, I'm open to any theories and comments in the chat. Please put them below or in the comments and let me know what you guys think about why you thought Palantir was up 5%. But I think particularly it was up because of this generative AI stuff that came out from NVIDIA and Accenture. Now, another thing that happened, here's my second part of why I think Palantir is up 5% on the day. OpenAI. So OpenAI has officially confirmed they raised $6.5 billion at a $157 billion valuation. Anyone investing in a venture round at a $157 billion valuation is expecting some level of a 5 to 10x, which would put OpenAI at a $1 trillion outcome, whether that's through IPO, acquisition, whatever it means. For some context, Elon Musk, he sold 25% of XAI, which is his new AI startup, to compete with OpenAI, at a $6 billion of a fundraise at a $24 billion valuation. So he sold 25% of the company. OpenAI sold 4% of the company, $6.5 billion at a $157 billion valuation, which means the market, obviously in the private markets, was willing to give OpenAI a gigantic premium because they just think OpenAI is ahead. In August, OpenAI had 200 million weekly active users for ChatGPT. Today, they announced they have 250 million. In about 2 months, they went from 200 to 250 million weekly active users for a product that theoretically is commoditized. You should be able to use Gemini, Claude. There's all these different LLMs. I personally use GPT. I pay for GPT because it is just that good. And I'm one of those 250 million weekly active users. So what does this mean for Palantir? Okay, OpenAI gets a $157 billion valuation in the private markets. I think the public markets are looking at that. They can't buy OpenAI, so they're asking themselves a question. And the question is, how do we get exposure to AI? And the only way they might get exposure to the software application of AI, again, OpenAI is a software company, is Palantir. So again, I think there's two components here. I think there's the NVIDIA Accenture stuff that's leading to this macro thesis around generative AI in the enterprise. And then there's this valuation comparison argument, which is OpenAI is not profitable. They're growing more than Palantir, yes, but they're not profitable. They're worth 157 billion. Palantir is profitable. They're a Fortune 500 company, right? S&P 500, and we are not buying them at half the valuation of OpenAI. Is that rational? That's a debatable point. But is that somewhat of a legitimate argument? Yes. I've talked to a lot of people over the past couple of weeks around this. There is an argument that, look, OpenAI at that valuation and Palantir at this valuation makes no sense given the alpha Palantir can deliver. Now, a public company has more scrutiny than a private company for a host of reasons. So you could argue that price to sales, PE, none of that makes any sense. But OpenAI is growing at 300% a year or something, some ridiculous number. Palantir's at 27%. If Palantir accelerates that 27% to 40, 50, 60%, meaning they have an NVIDIA quarter in a March of 2023 NVIDIA type of quarter where NVIDIA plants their flag in the ground and says, we are here. I don't think Palantir has had that quarter yet. They have that quarter in Q3, GG. It's game over. If they have that quarter anytime in 2025, it's game over. So I think the market is just thinking they're going to have that quarter. And the market's either going to be right or they're going to be wrong. I think they're going to have that quarter as well. I don't know when that's going to happen. I think it's going to be an incredible journey with everyone in the community when we see that quarter happen. But if that quarter does happen, then it's you think Palantir will grow into the valuation essentially, and buying it at 80 billion versus 157 billion is where the delta comes in. Now, let me caveat and say this before people watch this video and say, you know what, Amit is right, Palantir is super undervalued. I got to go get more Palantir. And I've said this on every single video. I have to add this caveat. I have no idea what will happen to the stock. I get a lot of questions every single day about people asking, is this a good buy? Is this the right price? And my answer has been the same since we rallied to 28. And I remember on 28, everyone couldn't believe we were at $28. If you are in this for the long term, I think over the next decade, Palantir will do very well. You have to make that decision. If you are not in this for the long term and you are wanting to buy it because you think it's going to run to 45 and you have FOMO that you didn't get enough shares and you want to get in before it runs to 45, I cannot guarantee that it's going to go to 45. I cannot guarantee in the next decade it's going to go to 45. I can only say, hey, for the long term, I think it will do well. In the short term, who knows? So in terms of like thinking of Palantir as like an investment, again, a lot of people have been here for a long time. You've understood the thesis. Now the cat's out of the bag. The market, the stock market that has trillions of dollars of liquidity is starting to understand the thesis. It is up to you to kind of figure out if you think the risk to reward based on this valuation makes any sense, and if that broader argument around valuations in comparison to OpenAI, et cetera, justifies the current valuation right now, or if you think they'll just grow in to the broader valuation. And I think that's going to be the question. If we have a recession or major macro pullback or anything, which, you know, randomly could happen, then yeah, this valuation is going to get hit because this valuation is going to have tough legs to stand on. But if the growth is there and we maintain a decent macro, we could see dips. I don't know if we have to see a 70, 80% correction like we saw from $45 to $6 back in 2022. So those are my thoughts. It's really, really exciting to cover this story. And it's just, I mean, I went live. I usually do a market close every day at 3:45. Shout out to you if you watch that market close. And usually it goes live at 3:45. It was literally freaking 331, and we were at $39.98. And I was like, oh my God, like I've got to go live to like make this. And so I went live. I'll leave the market close in the description and you can check it out. But the first 2 minutes of that are hilarious because I'm like, guys, I'm live. And I'm like staring at the price. I usually ring the bell when we get to a new level. And then we got from $38.99 to $39, which was just incredible. And it was really cool to kind of see that happen. And it was really fun to see that happen because it was a community event and we got to see it happen all together. So $39, really, really exciting for Palantir. I do think, you know, valuation is up there, but I also think they can grow into the valuation. I think some stocks can stay overvalued for a long time, and it is what it is. And I know a lot of people that hate the valuation right now hate to hear me say that, but that is the truth. Tesla, NVIDIA, Amazon have been overvalued for decades before they finally grew into it. And when they grew into it and the street figured it out, they sustained much higher valuations because now this is one of the best companies on the planet and people want to partake in the wealth creation process with that company as they execute by being an investor. And I think that's what we're seeing right now in the context of Palantir. Last two things I have to show. So this one was really cool. A lot of people probably did not see this today, but if you did not see this, you have to see this. Michael Siebel tweeted about Palantir. For those that don't know Michael Siebel, he is the co-founder of Twitch and he is the president of Y Combinator. Y Combinator is the largest Silicon Valley startup accelerator on the planet. He says, the investing world is convinced that Palantir is an unscalable consulting company. For over a decade, very few competitors were funded as a result. Now that Palantir is a Fortune 500 company, S&P 500 inclusion, investors need to wake up. Large enterprises and governments need customizable, deeply integrated software solutions, especially in the age of AI. At YC, I'm happy to fund startups who want to compete with Palantir. If seed investors want to make money, they will do the same. I cannot explain how much street cred this gives Palantir. This guy is a legend in Silicon Valley. For him to get up there and say, yeah, everyone that doubted Palantir, you guys were kind of full of shit. And now you're starting to recognize enterprises really need clients or technology partners that deliver transformational solutions, which is what Palantir does. And that is something that we need to recognize as important, not sell you a ton of horse shit and then try to scale it by, some $50 per month subscription. Oh, we can get this 10,000 users. And like, no. We are going to work with BP for a decade, have an exclusive relationship with them in oil and gas, and build out the most transformational software ever to the point where they can never leave us because we're that good. That's different, bro. That's just different. It's a company with swagger. It's a company that understands what it means to win. It's a company that's not afraid to fail. It's a company that knows they've got the best juice and they're willing to drink that juice. And then they're willing to show everybody how good their juice is via AIP bootcamps. Hey, you want to take a little bit of our juice? Here's some of our juice. You could try it for free. Oh, you really like it? The rest of the juice is $5 million. But to even give your juice for free in the beginning means you have so much faith in those boot camps that these clients are going to drink this juice and they're going to get hooked on this juice. And we know this juice is the best juice in the world. And then we will be able to appropriately offer them a multi-million-dollar contract for that juice because we actually showed them the value. It is a fundamentally different approach to sales and marketing. It's a fundamentally different approach to building software. It's something most software companies have never done, actually let people try the juice before they charge for the juice. And it's building highly customizable solutions, which is where the consulting part comes in, with gross margins at over 80%, because at the end of the day, it's a software product. So to me, highly customizable solutions is not a bad thing. Like, is there some consulting there? Of course. But that consulting is what leads to a transformational relationship with that, in the words of Alex Karp, partner, not customer. And that partner chooses to stay with you for a very long time. I mean, Palantir is going to do close to $3 billion of revenue with less than 600 customers. It's just incredible, dude. It's a unicorn. It's something I've never seen in my life. It is something I'm so excited to be part of. I play a small role as an investor in that journey, and I hope everyone is excited to see kind of how Palantir is executing and getting to go on this ride with Alex Karp as he's building one of the most important companies on the planet. Last thing I want to show you guys, I found this clip as I was watching some old Karp clips today, and I think this clip is appropriate today as we hit $39.
How do we have the best investors in the world, especially individual investors? Why do they stick with us when times were hard? Why do they fight for Palantir? Why do they, every time someone writes something inane, Palantir's gone MAGA, Palantir's doesn't have a product, Palantir doesn't have margins. I'm sure this quarter Palantir's growth is decelerating despite the fact we're obviously crushing it in America. Palantir is too crazy. Palantir will never be profitable. Palantir can't IPO. Palantir is too weird and odd to produce something that will be disruptive. We knew it was bullshit. The people who out on the front fighting against that BS, fighting against lazy, inept, discriminatory in the sense that is ignorance, people maligning Palantir, do it in great part because they believe that we are fighting for them, and we are. And we're fighting for ourselves, and that's why we have such a great company. So thank you.
When Karp said that, again, mentioning retail investors, look, I met the guy in person. It's not a gimmick when he says we have the best investors in the world. And when he shouts out retail investors, I think he's so happy that the company's doing well and that retail investors, regular people with 9-to-5s that are putting a part of their paycheck into Palantir and that have done that when Wall Street did not believe in the company. I think he is so happy that those are the people that, as of now, ended up winning when it came to Palantir. I think he's just so happy about that because he did it his way. Palantir did it their way, and they didn't conform to the world. The world conformed to them. We're seeing now with the stock price, Wall Street's conforming to Palantir, and it's just a special story to be part of. And I think we're just getting started. So thank you, everybody, for listening and watching. Let me know your thoughts on hitting $39, your thoughts on my theories on why we were up 5% on the day. And yeah, thank you all for watching and being part of this journey. I'll see you guys in the next one.